The E30 is finished and I am so stoked with how it turned out. I know I've said it several times throughout this build process, but this whole project's really come to mean a lot to me, and I'm just really thrilled with how well it drives and just how it turned out. It's fantastic. I'm excited to show you guys the end result. I'm excited to take you for a first drive or a ride along. But before we do that, we've got to put our suspension, our wheels, tires, and our interior in the car. So let's get to it and then we can go enjoy it. And of course, if you enjoy how the car turned out, you should subscribe and keep coming back for more. Let's do this. After a handful of small headaches, the E30 officially runs. I spent a few hours in the engine bay tidying things up and buttoning up loose ends, and at this point, I think we can call the swap finished. This car is officially S52 powered. But an engine swap hardly makes a full build, so we're going to turn our attention to the suspension. Those of you that have watched the earlier episodes of this build series may remember when we swapped out our H&R Sport Springs for H&R Race Springs, both of which are great options for daily driver E30s just like this one. But come on, you know who you're talking to, right? The Race Springs had the E30 sitting nicely, but it was only ever going to be temporary because we had H&R coilovers on order and they have finally arrived. With them, we'll be able to dial in our ride height perfectly and close up that tire to fender gap so it looks perfect with our new Alpinas. We've opted for spring rates that'll give us a nice, streetable ride quality, and of course the dampers are valved to offer the same. As with pretty much every other runaway aspect of this E30 project so far, these are a no-compromise solution to give me the best daily driver I can imagine. But while the coilovers are a bolt-on system, there is some assembly required. Unlike most E30 kits, which are a DIY welded-together type job, H&R coilovers are a complete assembly. But as a result, we're going to have to install new hubs and bearings. Now, I'm not one to just throw money away on parts that aren't necessary, but it's not really possible to reuse our original wheel hubs. You can't really get the races off of the original spindle without them coming totally apart. But wheel bearings are also a service item, so we might as well put them on, and in this project's case, I want it to be as sorted as possible and as close to a restoration as it can be without actually calling it one. After not forgetting to install the dust shields that go behind the hubs and adding a little bit of clearance to the zinc plating, everything slides together. We'll actually have to torque the nuts down once all of the parts are installed on the car. The torque rating for these nuts is over 200 pounds, but overdoing it means you'll have excess drag and can ruin the bearing, so we want to get it just right. With the hubs installed, it's time to move upwards. We can reinstall the springs, and then we're going to need a top hat, or more importantly, a camber plate. And thankfully, that's where our buddy Jays comes in.
Yo! These are sick. God damn, Jays. Dude, these are really nice.
So for everybody that is not privy, which is probably everybody, Jays started Broadway Static basically the same time as Stanceworks, a couple years after Stanceworks.
It's been 2012.
10th anniversary on his tape here.
Yeah.
So we did like a limited run of Stanceworks coilovers way back in the day, and then Jays took that idea and kind of ran with it. Mm-hmm. And he is one of only a handful of guys out there who can make truly kind of bespoke suspension parts like camber plates for these E30s that we love. Our H&R coilovers do not come with camber plates or shock mounts, so I called up Jays and I said, hey, here's what I want. I want a camber and caster adjustable mount that can work with these E30 coilovers that we've got, and also I need them in like 2 days. Can you pull it off? So he custom machined these, anodized them, got them all assembled, packaged up, shipped out, sent over a couple sets because he knows we got several cars over here. So we're going to put these on our H&R coilovers and then put them on the car. And so within 3 days of making the phone call, Jays had custom machined and anodized some camber and caster plates for the front of the E30. There are a few other aftermarket options out there, but thankfully Jays knows how to make sure that these are going to stay quiet and daily driver friendly. Not to mention the fact that he also set them up to match all of our H&R parts like spring inner diameters and shock diameters. Now, of course, having these adjustable camber and caster plates are great if you're setting up your track car to handle exactly the way you want it to, but do we really need that for a street car? Well, no, not necessarily, but this is a better solution than running stock spring hats, and it'll help us dial in our wheel fitment perfectly. And with the camber plates installed, the H&R coilovers are now ready to go on. After 3 bolts in the strut tower and a few down low, the front coilovers are installed and the rear is even easier. It's simply a spring and adjustable perch. And with that, the coilovers are installed. I fitted new tie rods to the steering rack that we installed in the last episode, and now the suspension is more or less finished. So let's talk wheels. The E30 is getting an incredible set of extremely rare, authentic magnesium Alpina splits, and it was my dear friend Nick Foster that provided these for the project. But when they showed up, they were a bit too wide for what we need, so I put together a complete episode not only showcasing how to measure wheel width and back spacing, but how to measure for building custom 3-piece wheels exactly like this. These Alpinas utilize vintage BBS motorsport halves, which are still available new, but only in specific sizes, so we can't fine-tune the fitment so much as we can get it close, but that's okay because we can use some H&R Track Plus spacers to dial it in after the fact. But on top of needing custom halves, we also need to refinish these centers because, as you can tell, they are bare magnesium, which is corroded to a nasty black surface finish. But I passed him off to my buddy Sean, and after he worked his magic, we've got them back and assembled with new hardware, and oh my god, do they look amazing. Now, there is a lot of history behind these wheels that I'm going to touch upon later in the episode, but for now, we need to get tires on them. And thankfully, our friends at Falcon Tire have sent over a set of RT615Ks. These offer tons of grip, have an awesome classic-looking tread pattern, and most importantly, if you're like me and want to run 16-inch wheels, this is one of the few good options that we actually get. As always, my boy Eric at Rocco's Wheel and Tire came to the shop to mount these tires up, and is going above and beyond to make sure no scratching or damage occurs to our new lips or our freshly painted centers. Now, I knew these wheels would turn out to be incredible, but I had no idea that they would be this good. I'm eager to see them on the car, but before we do that, we've got to install some H&R spacers, just 5mm worth, to clear the back pad of the wheel from the factory brake caliper. Along with the spacers, I had some custom hub rings machined so that we can adapt the inner center bore of the wheel to the correct bore size of the E30 hub. One problem I didn't expect to encounter was just how thick the back pads of these wheels are. I had to use the longest lug bolts in my collection just to bolt them on. I think at some point the wheels will look better with a black lug bolt, but for now, this will do the trick. I spent quite a bit of time adjusting the coilovers to get the car to sit just right. Some might say that time would be better spent corner balancing the car, but in this case, I just wanted to look the part. We've got our suspension, wheels, and tires installed, so it's time to finally set it down on the ground, but we're not quite ready to drive it just yet because we got one more important modification. Last but certainly not least, we've got a set of Scheelmann Sportline R seats to install. I remember seeing Scheelmanns in the first E9 I ever saw, and ever since they've felt like an integral part of building a classic tried-and-true BMW. I loved the Scheels that I had in my F250, and so I didn't hesitate for a second when Toby mentioned he'd be willing to send over a set of Sportline Rs for the E30. Don't get me wrong, E30 sport seats are comfortable, but Scheelmanns are hard to beat given that they're designed to both look good and be as ergonomic as possible. The sliders and mounts make for a relatively straightforward installation, and the size of the Sportline Rs fit well inside of the E30. They also offer a really low driving position even with the sliders installed. Nick here is 6'4", and it offers him ample headroom inside of the car, even if he were to wear a helmet. So for you tall guys out there, these are an excellent option if you want headroom inside of a small car. With that, we've got our seats, our Momo steering wheel, and our Renstall shift knob installed, and I think we can call the car more or less finished, at least for the time being. I think we all know that these projects are never truly done, and I already have a list of things that I want to come back and start changing. But at this point, it's time to just get out there and actually drive this car. right, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I've actually had the car up and running for a couple of weeks now. This isn't the first drive. I had to get all the kinks sorted out, make sure that it all worked, right? But I gotta say, I've been coming up with every opportunity that I can just to drive the car. Any excuse, any errand. I'm even making errands up. Oh, I guess I need to go get this or that. And if that's not a testament to how much fun this car has been, I don't know what is. That's exactly what you hope for when you finish a project. And honestly, it's just got me excited. It's been a long time since I've kind of, I don't know, just been eager to drive my car. You know, obviously not on a racetrack, but just to get behind the wheel, even if I'm sitting in traffic like I'm doing right now, what a great reward to finish up a project. Hopefully you guys can hear how good the car sounds. It sounds amazing. The mufflers turned out perfect. It's really tame as far as volume. You can talk over it. I'm not gonna get a ticket. No one's gonna complain, but it sounds like a BMW inline six. The ride quality feels amazing. I wouldn't hesitate to drive this thing across the country. No one's gonna be uncomfortable. The seats feel great. The shifter feels great. The steering feels great. All of it. It's just, I mean, you would expect it. We've redone pretty much everything, but man, I'm just stoked. It's everything I hoped that it would be. And it's, again, a testament to why Corey loved these E30s so much. It feels like a return to my roots. And I know that this is what people do with cars. They finish their project and they go out and drive them. But I feel like a lot of the time I got caught up with being in the shop building something instead of heading out to the mountain roads and really getting to enjoy the machine. And that's what I feel like I'm about to get the opportunity to do. I'm eager to do it. I'm looking forward to calling up my friends like Corey called me up to say, hey, grab your keys. We're gonna go hit some mountain roads today. We're gonna go, you know, blast some turns. And it's really cool to have that desire as well as a car that I feel like I could drive literally every day of the week. It just feels good. It's a change of pace. It's not some crazy high horsepower, totally nutso race car. It's just, I don't know, it's an enthusiast machine. I probably sound really silly getting this excited over something like this, especially when you look at my garage and there's a crazy Model A or a Ferrari race car, but like, this is what I'm excited about. I'm into it. I owe this to Corey, so thank you, buddy. And now I'm excited to show you guys the car because it turned out fucking awesome. I'm sure some of you guys remember how this car looked when we first started, and to the layman, it probably doesn't look a whole lot different outside of the shinier wheels. But the truth is, we've changed pretty much every aspect of this car without going overboard. The Euro bumpers radically changed the way the outside of the car looks, and gave it that simple, classic, chrome-bumpered, old-school BMW look that these E30s deserve. And the bumpers pair perfectly with the polished lips of our vintage Alpinas. Our H&R coilovers got the car sitting nice and low, but still daily driver friendly, and our fender gap is closed up while our Falcon tires fill the arches beautifully. And now I know some of you guys out there are wondering, Mike, are these really the wheels that you want on this car? And I'm probably not going to sell you if you're not into them already, but if you're curious as to why, the answer is because if you're a BMW enthusiast, these split Alpinas are probably some of the coolest and rarest wheels we could put on this car. They're a true piece of BMW tuning history, and the fact that they're magnesium adds to the cool factor. As far as I'm aware, these old school splits were only ever offered for race programs, and to have one of the only 4-lug sets I've ever seen really caps off the aesthetics of this project. I'm thrilled with how the interior came out as well. It's really understated, and if you didn't know any better, you'd probably just assume it was all stock. But the Schielmanns offer bolstered support so we can go carve the mountains on the weekends, and we got all of the interior parts and pieces in place to hide the fact that this car was swapped from an automatic to a manual. It looks factory. And then of course there's the engine and transmission swap, and believe me when I say it feels incredible behind the wheel. The 3.2 liter produces 240 horsepower, which is literally double what the 2.7 originally made. Off camera, I swapped the original 2.79 open differential for a 3.73 limited slip, and it really made that power feel that much better. And of course, I'm happy with the way the motor looks. I'm not really one for shaved engine bays. I like a look of purpose and functionality, and I think if you didn't know any better, you'd probably just assume this engine came in this car. There's nothing flashy, nothing overstated, nothing to command your attention, just some plastic covers that say BMW M Power if you know what you're looking for. And that, of course, brings us back to Corey's car, the reason I even built my own. There were a number of reasons Corey loved these E30s, enough to have 2 of his own. And while I've had several, I spent probably the last decade overlooking E30s in favor of their bigger 5 Series counterpart, the E28. But when Corey passed away, I knew I wanted to find some way to continue relating to and remembering him. And I figured the best way to do that is to build an E30 and celebrate all of the things that he loved about these cars so I could fall in love all the same. Part of this project was getting Corey's car back up and running so that it can be enjoyed not only by me and his friends, but more importantly, by his brothers. And on that note, I know I won't be holding on to this car forever. But I'm happy to say at least now I have one to call my own, and I'm going to think about him every single time I get behind the wheel. I've put a couple hundred miles on the E30 already, and every time I step on the accelerator, I smile. Not only because it's fun, but because I think about him and everything he loved about these silly, quirky cars. This right here is the entire reason why we do this, because it makes us happy. Sometimes it's the building, sometimes it's the repairs, and oftentimes it's the drive itself that we value most. But most importantly, it's the friends that I've made thanks to these expensive, annoying hunks of steel. But this time around, instead of the friends that I've made, it's about the friends that I will remember. And while I'd rather still have Corey with us, if there's one thing I can thank him for now, it's that he gave me yet another thing to be happy about behind the wheel.